All right, Zam, after many hours of hard work behind the scenes, without telling anybody what we're doing, we're finally here for our first official episode. It's episode 1, our first official guest coming up. Pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. We put in a lot of hard work and really excited to share this with our friends and family and people around the world.
Okay, so without further ado, let's get into episode 1 of Unanchored with Nabil Karim. All right, welcome to Unanchored, episode 1. I'm Shaheed Devji. Zam Karim is here with me, and like I said, it's the first official episode, and we've been waiting a long time to share this one because our good friend Nabil Karim is our first guest, and we're going to have a conversation with him a bit later on in the show. But first, if you haven't heard our intro episode 0, where it was just me and Zam talking, introducing ourselves and what Unanchored is, let's do that a little bit here, Zam. We're excited to actually get going here because, like I said, we've been working quite hard over the last several weeks and months to get some really cool interviews and conversations recorded. And I'll say that right up front that some of them will be pre-recorded by a matter of weeks, and some of them will be pre-recorded by only a matter of a couple days. I thought we would try and dupe our audience, Zam, and so I put my blue shirt on, what I was wearing when we talked to Nabil, a few weeks ago. But then I realized during the time of COVID-19, which we're stuck in, the biggest thing that we cannot control is our haircuts.
Oh, for sure. And my hair, I think I just got my quarantine shave done prior to that.
Exactly. So I looked at the video and I realized we're not duping anyone because you had a shaved head.
And I have no idea what shirt I was wearing, so I can't recreate that. It's been a number of weeks since we did talk to Nabil, but no, the world hasn't really changed in that period of time, so everything pretty much still stands.
Yeah. The one thing that has changed since we talked to him is that his job, his work kind of changed. He's still at ESPN. He's still at the mothership of sports reporting and sports broadcasting, but soon after we recorded the conversation with him, ESPN launched a new show called The Replay on this new app called Quibi, which is an app for your phone and other things that focuses on short form content, so like 6 to 10 minute episodes of video focused content. And there's sports shows like Nabil hosts, but and it's kind of an entertainment show as well. But there's also like your typical thing that you would find on Netflix, like a comedy or a drama or whatever. So that has changed.
Yeah, it's a new platform hoping to capitalize on people's short attention spans and just looking for quick hits of content, and that Nabil's still doing that, but I believe he's also doing Sports Center as well. And but there's not a lot
of sports to cover these days, but they're doing a good job. And you know what helps all sports broadcasters these days is The Last Dance, the documentary on Michael Jordan, not Jackson. Whenever I'm talking to Sheba, my wife at home, I'm always saying, hey, I'm just going to watch that Michael Jackson documentary. But it's subliminal. I want a Michael Jackson documentary because that's my kind of thing. Not in the negative pedophilic way, but let's talk about something else. Have you watched much of that Michael Jordan documentary?
I'm 2 episodes behind, but it's been really interesting, and it's really cool to look back on the last 30 years of NBA basketball. Look at the first 3 championships that the Bulls won, the ones that I've mostly seen, and now looking forward to the last 3 that they won, 96, 97, 98. And it's so
spoiler
crazy
alert. I was gonna say I really enjoyed, as much as you can enjoy the episode on the passing of and the murder of Michael Jordan's dad, but I didn't think it might be a spoiler. But really, this is documented history. It's not a spoiler, right? But really cool, like you're saying, to see the history, at least the modern history of the NBA from the perspective of the best player and the best team of the last whatever you said, 30 years, right?
And it's interesting. It's been really interesting to see.
And Lakers fans, we understand that there's a challenge there.
Exactly. And then early on, the rivalry Pistons and the Celtics in the late 80s, early 90s, and how Dennis Rodman goes from being a Piston, winning those championships with them, and then going to the Bulls for those final three. Like, it's pretty cool to look back on, and then hear from the horse's mouth, and in Michael Jordan himself, and all those characters from those teams, from what essentially 84 until 1998, when that team was disbanded.
Yep. Yeah. It's too bad that we did talk to Nabil prior to that documentary coming out, because I'm sure he would have had some cool anecdotes and insights into that. But that's for Nabil Karim part 2. When we get him back on the show, maybe one of our anniversary shows, we can get him back on.
Mm-hmm.
But prior to getting to Nabil, we just wanted to quickly talk about what to expect on Unanchored. If you haven't heard that introduction podcast and episode, go back and listen to it if you'd like. But if you don't want to, a quick primer here. Zam and I are quote unquote failed broadcasters. Have some experience in the broadcasting industry, both in radio and television. And we'd been missing a regular broadcast, a regular responsibility, regular communication, using our voices and faces in this case for whoever's watching on video, talking to the world. And we think we're interesting, but we're probably not interesting enough for you to tune in on a regular basis on your own, just for us. So we're going to be talking to some interesting people. We have Nabil on. He's a good friend, and we, as you'll hear, we started our journeys together, trying to become sports broadcasters specifically. But we've got some other people on who we don't even know, and who also have really interesting stories. And from my perspective, what I'm looking to do is talk to people who I can be inspired by, but who also I can relate to, and others can relate to due to their stories. And even if Nabil, for example, is a sports anchor, which not a lot of people can relate to, the journey that he took to get there and some of the lessons that he learned along the way, certainly are universal lessons. And that's what I'm hoping to bring out of our conversations and share with the world.
Yeah, and we're getting a chance to share some really interesting stories and continue our passion for storytelling, as we did as journalists and broadcasters, and continue sharing things that we find interesting in the world, and things that we believe that other people will find interesting in the world as well. And this conversation is one of those as well. And it'll be fun to share that. And I know a lot of people are excited have been excited to see this, based off of what we've shown already through our social media so far.
So Nabil Karim, he's our first guest, and we'll get to that conversation in a couple minutes here. But just a little bit of history about how we all know each other, because we do kind of talk about it a little bit as if people know the history between us. But Nabil and I met when I still lived in Nanaimo, British Columbia. I was a teen. I was dating his cousin secretly, and I can say that now because we're both married to different people and have our own kids, and our parents aren't going to get mad at us for that. But I'm sure he knew of that at the time, and he came in for his one and only visit, I think, during my time there, and was this macho guy, a few years older than me, and challenged me to an arm wrestle, and I was super freaked out about it, thinking he was trying to intimidate me. But after that, I didn't really come into contact with him until I was in my first couple years of university at Simon Fraser University in Burnaby, BC, which is where Nabil is from, and which is where he was going to university as well. And we bonded over our cultural similarities. We practiced the same faith. We're Ismaili Muslims, and we volunteered on the Ismaili Students Association. And then really bonded when we threw this Hockey Night in Canada event in a SFU classroom or theater auditorium, and him and I pretended to be a Don Cherry and Ron McLean, and that's really when things took off. I found, and then we started this show, The Press Box, because we both had this common interest in becoming sports broadcasters, and started a sports podcast, and really from there we bonded over this common interest of trying to get to the top of the sports broadcasting ranks. One of us succeeded, and another not quite. But what's your history with Nabil, Zam?
Well, it's mostly through you initially, and he's a really cool guy and a fun person to hang out with, and I'd say Nabil and I became better friends when I moved to Toronto in 2011. he was already there and didn't live too far away from where I was living, and we would connect. And I remember being at Dave and Buster's, just north of the city with my friends, and then ran into Nabil and his wife Nasrin and a few of their friends, and then we ended up what turned into my friends going home at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. I remember hanging out with Nabil and going back to his place, like to keep the party going until like 2 or 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
And Nabil has always been known as someone that enjoys himself, and I love that about him. And I can't quite enjoy myself as much as he does, but
yeah, read between the lines.
Yeah, we have a good time, and I love hanging out with him. I remember Super Bowl parties at his old house in Toronto or Mississauga, and just he's been someone that I've also relied on as a mentor, and someone who has helped me get jobs in the broadcast industry. One of which was at that previously mentioned news station in Prince George, BC, where he got his start, and I got my second job in the industry, and has really helped me. He really helped me get through some hard times, and really helped me focus and get over the hump when there were times where I probably wanted to quit the industry and go try something else.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that everyone who knows Nabil knows him as is fun, as you've mentioned. Another thing is a really, really good friend, someone you can count on. And then for the purposes of our conversation here, for those who don't know him, super talented. And you had a little anecdote you wanted to share about what Jay Onright usually calls Nabil when he has the chance. Jay Onright being one of the top broadcasters sports broadcasters in Canada.
Jay Onright on the Jay and Dan podcast has said on several occasions that Nabil was underutilized and his talent was so much more at TSN, and TSN didn't use him properly, and said that on several occasions, and it really his talent is now being showcased at ESPN, and he's really being able to sort of let his wings sort of fly a little bit more than he was given that opportunity to before.
All right, so without further ado, let's formally introduce Nabil. Nabil Karim is a sports broadcaster, a family man, and most importantly to us, a really good friend. He started his career in broadcasting in the small town of Prince George, British Columbia, as a news reporter of all things. But some would argue it was a little-known podcast called The Press Box that kicked it all off several years prior. But I digress. A sports fan at heart, Nabil was always intent on making it as a sports broadcaster, and soon after starting his career, began his ascent up the Canadian sports broadcasting ranks. After stops at Fox Soccer Channel in Winnipeg, he ended up in the Big Smoke as an online host for CBC Sports in Toronto, where he covered hockey and the FIFA World Cup. From there, Nabil made the jump to one of Canada's premier sports networks, TSN, and quickly became a household staple on the anchor desk. But Nabil's journey is not without its challenges. After years at TSN and experiences only others could dream of, what began as a passion and what drove him unexpectedly morphed into something less. That's when he decided to bet on himself once again and parlayed his experience and talent into one of the most coveted jobs in sports as an anchor at ESPN, the mother of all sports networks. So Zam and I are proud to welcome the first guest of Unanchored, our friend Nabil Karim. All right, Nabil, after all this time, we're back podcasting together.
Yeah.
This feels weird, but it feels oddly comfortable and familiar. How you doing?
I'm good, man. And you're right. Like, this is where it all started, right? We had that idea coming up in the industry together. Like, how can we get some experience? And I still remember you came to me and you're like, okay, let's do this thing called podcast. I'm like, what?
Yeah, imagine that.
I know, because we wanted to do like radio and stuff like that. And I remember I was at like university radio, and it was terrible. And you came to me with this idea about a podcast. And when you explained it to me, it was basically like a radio show that we could put on a website. And that was like the launch of all the hard work and kind of the journey. Because, hey, listen, man, I'm gonna give you all the credit in the world, because it had nothing to do with me. You were way ahead of your time with that podcast. It was nobody's podcast. I don't think anybody really knew what a podcast was besides a few tech guys like you. But man, you're right. This is kind of nostalgic.
Yeah, it was definitely an underground thing that was still upcoming, and you had to do a lot of tech stuff to get it up and running, which we'll get into a little bit here. But before we do, you're down south, as many of our listeners, if we have any listeners by this point, you're the first guest, right? So it fits quite well for you to be the first guest on this show, because my first ever podcast and our first ever podcast was together. So that's pretty cool, and I appreciate you coming on. How are things down south? Where you're at ESPN, obviously, but where do you live? What city are you in?
So ESPN's based in Bristol, Connecticut. I'm living in a place called Avon, which is about 30 minutes from Bristol. A small town, but it's great. It's a great family area. And it's been great, like nice school areas, like as far as school districts are concerned, which was a big thing for me. It was, safety, school districts. My son's turning 5, so he's in pre-K this year. He's going to kindergarten next year. So it's been great. You know what? Like, the transition's been awesome. We're lucky. The house we ended up buying wasn't our first choice, but it ended up being the best choice because the neighbors we have here are amazing. Amazing. And it's kind of like, it's almost like a TV show in a sense when we first moved here, because everyone was so friendly. The first week we moved in, like, it was constant people knocking on your door, coming by with like baked goods or bottle of wine or whatever it was, and just came to say hello and introduce themselves. And the neighbor who lives right behind me has become a really good friend. I let him know when I'm out of town. He watches over the house, and he'll come over. He was over Saturday night hanging out, and that's not something I really did too much of in Toronto when I lived there for 10 years, or even Vancouver, really, to be honest. So that whole situation has been great. The home situation and work-wise, it's been great, man. It's going to be 1 year, May 1st, which is kind of mind-boggling, to be honest.
Yeah, that it feels like just yesterday you made the decision. So it sounds like it's feeling like home at this point.
Yeah, and you know what? The transition was crazy. It was like, listen, I moved cities before, right? I've done this before. I've moved around within a country. But moving to a different country, that's a whole different ballgame. And I was lucky because ESPN is owned by Disney, and Disney has this thing called their relocation team, and they assign an advisor to our case and take care of everything. But at the same time, there's so much paperwork to go along with it. There's the stress of what you have to do with your own stuff in Toronto or wherever you're coming from, your origin. Just shipping cars, things like that. Like, my car didn't pass a U.S. safety standard because it didn't have a tire pressure monitoring system on it. So I had to sell my car in Toronto, which was a pain in the ass because I just bought the car a couple years ago or a year and a half ago. So just little things like that. And then Nasreen, my wife, she was pregnant at the time, 6.5, 7 months pregnant at the time when I decided I was going to leave and when I was leaving. And so, for us, it was like, do we come here and have the baby here so we're all together right away? Or do we have the baby in Toronto? And we decided Toronto because, she's already comfortable with the doctors. We know the health system there. And that was difficult, that transition, because I left April 30th and they stayed back. They didn't come till Hannah was born June 2nd. They didn't come till like late July. So that was a lot of time to be away from your kid. And you guys, Shaheed, you have kids. I know Zam, you don't have kids, but it's easy to connect with that anyways. It's tough to be away from them, right? And so I go back and forth, and man, I'm telling you, every time I had to say bye to Adam, it was so difficult. It was a challenge, I think, at one point. But then when I got back to ESPN, I loved the work. And I think that's what really got me through everything. It wasn't I was going in blind, basically, because this is a whole new ball game here. It was a leap of faith in a sense. But again, I love the work. It's been great. It's been challenging. And I think in that sense, it's the best move I've ever made, honestly. I think life-wise, we're still adjusting, not having many friends here and stuff, and still having to, Nestor's not working right now. So, when she starts working, she'll get her own set of friends and so forth. And I think that'll make things a little bit easier. But besides that, not having our family around us, I think has been a transition. But overall, I think we look at it, we came in with an open mind, and, we've had a great time so far.
Yeah. Zam, You definitely know what it's like moving around. We all, whoever's worked in the broadcast industry in Canada or elsewhere, we know what it's like moving around. But I certainly haven't experienced the need to do that cross country and then to leave your family, especially with little kids. So I can't imagine what that's like. I struggle going to work every day and leaving the kids at home, or staying late at work and not seeing bedtime. So I can't imagine. But it sounds like things have certainly settle down, and the family life is looking good. So that's glad to hear. I'm glad to hear that.
So Nabil, like I know I've done it where I've done moves on my own, going from you got started in Prince George. I ended up in Prince George shortly, and then doing a cross-border move. You did this one to the States. I did early on in my career to the Middle East.
That's right.
It's a completely different beast doing it with a family, like you said, Shaheed. I can't imagine doing it with thinking about more than one other person. But the logistics of it must have been, well, as you say, are so huge. Do you think it makes it more rewarding to have like a team, a family behind you to be able to do a big move like that with?
I think so. And I think it keeps me more focused too, to be honest, because I know there's a lot riding on the move. So, I basically ripped everybody out of their situations, with Adam and his friend. I mean, he's 4, but he has a set of friends, he knows his community, our Somali community and his Montessori friends or whatever it was. And, I took him away from that, and that affected him for sure a little bit. With my wife, with Nasreen, all our friends are there, our families are, my sister's there, who she's really close with too. And so it was hard. It was hard in a sense, but also for me, it kept me more focused on the task at hand. So when I went to work, or when I do go to work, I think my mentality is a little bit different here. I'm uber competitive, and really, really, it's almost like starting all over again in a sense. When you guys first got those first jobs, you're really focused and you want to do everything you can, and do as much as you can. That's kind of my mentality here right now, which is nice because at this point of your career, sometimes you can kind of just, I made it, and just kind of do the bare minimum to get around. But that doesn't work around here. Like, everyone here is the best of the best, and I know, and I make decisions based upon knowing that we sacrificed a lot to move here. Who knows? I mean, I think, again, like you said, Zam, it's a little bit easier when you're on your own, and you can move around a bit. It's a little easier, but I think just, I guess, having a bit of, for me, it's pressure, a little more weight on my shoulders, knowing that we have sacrificed a lot. It's a great opportunity, and I think it was the right decision to make. But I think having those guys with me help me. And I say those guys, my family with me, help me, but also keeps me really focused, knowing that I have a goal in mind. Right.
Okay, so we've talked about where you've landed, and I want to talk about sort of more about what you're doing and where you might go after this. And what you referenced there was your mentality. I want to talk about your Mamba mentality, because I have for a long time seen you as someone who has this really, as you mentioned, competitive mentality, similar to what we've heard Kobe Bryant talk about a lot. But before we do that, I want to go back to the beginning a little bit and talk about the fact that your big break in sports broadcasting was that little known podcast called The Press Box. It was you and I with some budget gear from Radio Shack, no idea what we're doing, but with the best intentions and the biggest goals. Tell me a little bit what you remember about that, sort of why you decided that was a good idea for you, and sort of how it might have led to how your journey started.
Well, I'm really glad that, first of all, I connected with you on this, right? I think we knew each other before that. I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've never fully admitted this publicly, but I dated your cousin, and that's how we met.
Right. That's right.
That's how we met.
But we didn't really know each other at that point, right?
No,
that
definitely
was just
not.
Like,
You were just a dude I was scared of because you were a lot bigger than me, and definitely made it known that you were trying to intimidate me. And the only time that we did meet, so yeah, that's pretty much how we knew each other.
Yeah, but like it was great that I think when we did really connect, it was over broadcasting, because I don't think if I didn't have you around and I didn't have somebody who's just as motivated as I was, maybe that I wouldn't have got to where I got, because I think you need that push, right? Especially because I talk about this all the time now when people ask, like, if you remember, you go back at that time, there weren't many people who looked like us who were on TV, right? There was like Farhan, maybe, there's a few other people in the industry, especially in sports. In news, or a few, you could sprinkle a few, but I think it was important to have that motivation. I think when I decided I was going to do this, everything kind of changed for me. Like I finally had a passion, because for a long time, I would say from like grade 10 to like second year university, I was just kind of coasting, right? And I finally got that passion. And so when we were doing this kind of stuff, we would do it at your house, and we're figuring it out. And for some people, it could have been boring. It could have been like, screw this, man, it's not working. Well, we kept trying to make it work because both of us were super passionate about doing this. You were a couple years younger than me, so you were behind me, right? But as far as schooling is concerned, but I think it was really important to have you and your support, because I think we needed that. We both needed that, right? But I don't know. I look back and I had a lot of fun doing it, right? Like we were kind of joking around. Our biggest concern at the time was like getting a headset, right? Like we were trying to get a headset and the mic splitter, and
and then we had to line up the audio because we were recording on separate computers with separate headsets, and I couldn't do it perfectly, and you ended up sounding like you had a lisp on a few of the episodes, and I remember you not being too happy about that, but we just had to do the best we could, because like I was saying before we started recording here, I've got the studio set up in my home office now. I can plug in like 10 mics and call you via FaceTime or whatever and record it with literally just by sitting down and pressing a button. It wasn't that easy back then, but we somehow made it happen.
Oh, dude! I mean, your setup's changed a little bit since we did our podcast. But
although Zam still had some trouble getting on this Zoom call with us.
Oh, don't even start me on Zam. Don't even start me. Like, this was ridiculous. His ridiculous. Like,
sitting there in his lake house, right?
I'm at the lake house, and I get a text at like, what was it? 3:45.
No, it was 4:35, 4:45.
4:35. We're starting now. Like
3 hours early.
Yeah. So it's all good. Good thing I'm able to get on board. But
you're in quarantine. We'll talk a little bit about that. You've got nowhere to be right
now. Good thing you have nothing to do. You have nothing to do.
Absolutely nothing to do.
You should be ready 24/7.
I was gonna say at the beginning, I feel like I distinctly remember during my time working at Future Shop getting headsets for the podcast.
Yeah, it might have been you. I can't remember, but if you remember.
That, and then if I also remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys did the BCIT sports broadcasting class with Perry Solkowski and Shane Foxman.
Right.
We did that before the podcast, I think.
Yeah, and I did that class. You guys did that January 2005. I did that class September 2004. So one semester ahead of you guys.
Did we do that together?
The class.
Me and you Nabil did, not Zam.
Yeah, I wasn't in the class with you guys. I was with some other people. I think only a couple of them ended up going through the industry, but it was a good starting point for a lot of people, and kind of a place where guys like Perry and Shane are, first of all, both brutally honest. Second of all, are good mentors to kind of help you get started in the industry.
Dude, Shane was huge for me, like when I was at BCIT, and it was crazy just because I did that course. He knew who I was, and I was interning at CBC in my first semester during Christmas. I did, I think, 3 internships with him. I ended up doing so much, and he would let me go to Canucks games or practices and get into scrums and stuff like that. I don't know if it was because he was lazy or just wanted to give me an opportunity, but he was great, man. I had a great time with Shane and learned a lot from him. And he's a super talented dude.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, I'm assuming you were always into sports. I know you were an athlete growing up, and I don't know what kind of athlete you were, but I know you were an athlete.
Yeah, not good enough.
Yeah, otherwise you wouldn't be sitting where you were. You'd be on the court or
Yeah.
something, right? But I'm assuming you were always into sports. But like, what made you decide to pursue sports broadcasting? I remember you telling me at some point along the line that you were considering going into law, like your sister did, and your dad's
Yeah.
a businessman, and so what was it around that same time of the podcast that you decided to pursue this, and why? Because like you said, there
I
weren't
think,
many people we could
yeah.
look to, and there wasn't really a path that was laid out for us to take.
Yeah. I mean, I think I go back to like when I was a kid. I was, you go like grade 5. Dude, I was out of shape. I was really out of shape. I was like 140 pounds in grade 5. I was heavy. And my pediatrician, I'll never forget this guy, Dr. Wishart, put me on a diet. And he said, you got to start being more active and start playing more sports. And again, that's not to like body shame anybody or anything like that. It's just I was unhealthy. And so, I started playing a lot more sports, was way more active. And from there, it just became like a passion. And then, I mean, back in the day, you didn't have the internet. So you had, you check your scores on like the newspaper, right? And you don't even get like the West Coast game sometimes. So from there, I was used to read the papers all the time, and the sports just kind of became a passion, and then started playing basketball, and I just loved it. That's all I loved was sports. And so I think you fast forward to like grade 10ish. I had this grade 10 business class, and I was kind of thinking about, oh, that'd be kind of cool because we had to bring in a mentor, and that's the time Farhan Lalji just joined TSM. And Farhan was coaching at Burnaby Central. I went to Moscow, which is like close schools. And I got him to come to our class to speak to our class about what he does. And when he was talking about being a sports reporter, like, this is the coolest thing in the world, right? And we grew up watching Sports Page, Sportsnet, I would say, Pacific, I guess I think it was called at the time. Don Taylor was my favorite guy. And I was just always like, man, this guy's having so much fun doing what he's doing. And like, I can do this. And then it got to a point, I think, when, push come to shove, like, you're doing your finals and stuff in grade 12, and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do. And it just was unrealistic, honestly. Like, there weren't many jobs when you looked it up, and from the little research that I did at the time. And then visibility wise, there's nobody, right? And so, I don't know, like in our community, we do things well. We do, we're good at law, we're good at business, we're good at, being doctors and accountants and trades and all sorts of things. But like broadcasting just wasn't one of the things, in our wheelhouse. I was almost like afraid to talk to my parents about it. I was afraid, I should say. And so I just kind of gave it up, and I was like, oh, screw it. I'll just do what my sister's doing, because it was easy enough. I would get her stuff from, what she was doing first year. And yes, I did criminology for 2 years before I finally decided. And I was like, screw this, man. I'm just not, I liked it, didn't love it. And still my mind was like into sports and how could I work in sports? And finally it just came to a point where I started doing like these informational interviews, right? Where I was like emailing, calling people, cold calling them, and just people I thought were successful in the industry. And like, how did you get to where you got to? Right. And if I couldn't get hold of them there, I would read people's bios and just all nerdy stuff like that. But I came up with a little plan, like a 5-year plan. And I was like, okay, if I go to broadcast school, I was always going to finish university because I always wanted that, in the back of my belt there. But like, if after I went to broadcast school, how long would it take me to become successful? And I gave myself 5 years. If it wasn't a national market in 5 years, I would go to law school. And then that's when I talked to my parents about it. And then that's when we started doing kind of the podcast and stuff like that. That's when I geared myself. So when we were doing the podcast, I already knew I wanted to get into this stuff. It wasn't just like a passion project or whatever. That's when I was trying to build up for my resume for BCIT, actually, because I just didn't have any experience at all, right? So I think it was just I had to have that conversation with myself, and I did it. And then it was a conversation with your parents, and I mean, let's be real. They weren't too thrilled about it, but they've kind of become my biggest supporter since then. And I think what really helped me in that situation when I had that conversation was they had all these questions, and I had some of the answers because I had talked to all these people who are successful. And so they kind of realized that, hey, this guy's actually passionate about it. Like, he's actually done his homework. Seems like he knows, what he wants to do. Let's at least let him follow it, and then kind of go from there, right?
Yeah, it sounds like a really similar story, whether it's sports broadcasting or pursuing music or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's not one of those
Yeah.
tried and tested immigrant paths to success. So, yeah, that's interesting. But you certainly were a part of this group of immigrant Ismaili Muslim broadcasters in Canada. Not that you're an immigrant, but your parents. And you've kind of blazed that trail, and I assume it's been important to you to also take those calls since then to allow others to follow in your footsteps, because I see you doing that a lot, even doing a podcast like this, right? You don't need to do that. I saw you on Instagram Live yesterday, doing a chat with somebody else. So you don't need to do these things, but I'm assuming that's one of the reasons why you do them, because you got that help as you came up.
100%. I mean, like, and I enjoy doing these things. I mean, obviously we're friends, so it's a different situation. But for other people, my thing is that if somebody takes the time to email me, get my contact information, DM me or whatever it is, I'm going to respond to them. And especially when it comes to like broadcast questions, far too many times I've been on my phone number to people to call me. But like, I feel like, hey, listen, I was in that position at one point, and there were a lot of people who did not help me. People didn't respond to me. And if it's funny, it comes full circle. Trust me, it comes full circle, because now some of those people are the ones asking me for help. People who've been in the industry for a while now, which is kind of funny, but it's the way life works. But for me, I had people like Omar Sachedina was helping me quite a bit. When I was coming up, he was a mentor. There were other mentors that I had. And I think the thing that's key here too, when you're paying it forward, it's not just Ismailis that I help out. I'll help out anybody. It does not matter, who it is, because again, I think we all need to help each other as a society as a whole. That's what makes the world a better place. You can do your small part, right? And so I think that is really important to just give whatever feedback, whatever kind of advice, whatever help you can. If you're in that position, because I would hope that those people that I've helped, or at least reached out to, will do the same for the next person, right? And that's on them. But I would think that that would kind of continue, and the line continues, and you continue to pay it forward, right?
It's funny. Despite me kind of leaving the industry officially like 3-4 years ago as well, I do get people ask for advice, and I definitely try to do my best to pay it forward as much as possible. And like the three of us know uniquely how hard it is, not only to get into the industry, but to sustain yourselves in this industry. But it really comes down to, everyone has a different path, but it all comes down to just being willing to offer not just advice, but even just talking to someone, like hearing them out and hearing their ideas, hearing what they want to do. Because we know this industry, like it chews people up and spits them out all the time, right? But it's so much fun. Like I spent the last 2 years broadcasting in just for like McGill hockey for the last couple of years. And I would have done that even if they didn't pay me. That was so much fun. It was like doing the SFU hockey.
Don't tell them
that. Well, I'm not working for them anymore, so
they won't pay you. I'll tell you that.
Exactly. No, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I for sure am not paying you for this podcast. That's
exactly
for damn sure.
Yeah.
So this is out of pure joy for me and for us. But I think it comes down to what you're willing to. I think what you're willing to do for free is the worst thing, because I think we do a lot of stuff for free.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But
I keep coming back to podcasting too, just because I love it, because it's fun, right? I'm not getting paid for it.
But you guys both have a lot of experience at the same time, right? And it's great that people are reaching out to you too, because I think you guys both have valuable experience. You guys have done things in this industry, big things in this industry, at various points of your career. So people should reach out to you, and I hope you guys would, like you are, paying it forward also, because we all have different paths, and we all have different struggles, different motivations. I've talked to people who, it almost frustrates me sometimes when I'll say, hey, do it this way, do it that way. And some people are not wired the same. That's okay, right? But when they're kind of closer to me and I really want to see them succeed and I don't see them putting the work in, I don't care if you do it a different way. You do whatever you want. You're just asking me for my advice. This is my advice. What frustrates me is when people don't work hard. And they come back to me and they're like, man, I can't get anything. Like it's 3 months now. And I'm like, well, let me see your demo. And the demo is the exact same demo we had 3 months ago. We talked about updating it. Zam, you should be laughing because you were one of those guys.
Yeah.
And it was frustrating because I was like, what are you doing? And that's the only time that I kind of get frustrated is when I'm like, okay, this person's not putting in the work. Then, I mean, Zam, you're a different case again because you're a friend, so I'm going to keep harping on you. But like, for other people who reach out to me, I've developed, I don't know, friendships, but at least relationships with people who I don't even know, but they'll keep coming back to me and sending me stuff, and I'll always, give them feedback, and I remember who they are now. Mm-hmm. But then there are other people where I'm just looking, I'm like, sorry, man, I can't help you anymore because I don't see the work ethic. And
well, here's an example of that. And, a lot of people, if they don't know you, might think you're just providing lip service. If they know you, it's not lip service because you put in the work. But I believe I've got my timing right when, you went up to Prince George to work as a news reporter to start your career. I think your contract ran out. You came back down to Vancouver, and the first thing you did was call me up and you said, hey, I need to make a new demo. Well, guess what? You had just been working for a year and a half. You had a news demo that you could send out there, but you wanted some fresh experience with sports reporting. So we went out to a Whitecaps game. We shot a couple stories and stand-ups. And so now you had a fresh news demo. You had a fresh sports demo, and you were sending that out for your next job. And you ended up getting a job at, I think, Fox Sports or Soccer Channel in Winnipeg. You went out to CBC Sports, to TSN. You put in your time to earn your next shot, just like you're talking about. Where do you think that comes from? Like, why is that part of your DNA?
Yeah, it's funny. I think it goes back to like passion, and it goes back to like when I made the decision to want to pursue this. Man, I'm telling you, there's so many people who are like, people who are close to you, some who weren't, and just the reaction you would get when you said, "Oh, I'm going to broadcast." What's broadcasting? Like, what are you talking about? You want to be on TV? And it hurt. I'm not gonna lie, it hurt from some of the people you thought were, your good friends or, circle, community, so forth. And so that was always an internal motivation, was to prove people wrong, which is not super healthy, I guess, but like at the same time, that's what kind of got me through at times, because man, there were times at Prince George I just wanted to leave. Zam, I don't know if you felt the same way, but you worked hard there. And I look back on that now. It was a great experience. I got to make a lot of mistakes there, but they worked you really hard. And then even when I got to Winnipeg, the job that I thought I was getting, I didn't really get. I was doing more editing, and once in a while I'd be anchoring, which is wasn't even in the job description. And you need reps. It was a whole thing. And so there were times where I'd look and I was really hard on myself. I was always so hard on myself. And so I kind of reflect back to that 5-year plan. I'd reflect back to like the sacrifices I've made. I've left my friends, my girlfriend at the time, left all this stuff, my family. And so stick it out. Again, you think about, the internal motivation of people laughing at you, almost mocking you in a way. And then you just want to do it for yourself, right? There's just some things you just want to do you want to prove it to yourself. You can do it. You've made this decision. Now you have to follow through with it. So it's kind of just one of those things, a combination. And then I think that just kind of drives the hard work. Like I remember in Winnipeg, I just did not like my situation. I didn't like my work environment, didn't like my situation. And luckily I met, through our community, through Mosque and Kane, I met these Ismailis who were all in university, and used to hang out with them. But for the first 2 months, I didn't know anybody there because they all were living in Calgary at the time. But I would basically go in at night. So after midnight, I think our last show ended at midnight, and I would go in at about 12:30 on my days off. And I would go in because nobody would be there anymore. And I would go edit my demo tape, because we had the beta tapes and stuff. You couldn't do it on your computer. So I used to go do that for like an hour and a half, and it's not like I'm really good at it, and it's not like it's like a computer where it's super fast. And so you just scroll through tape, do this, do that, and then I would continue to network throughout my time there. So I spent 8.5 months in Prince George and about 9 in Winnipeg. But throughout that time, like after the first 2 months, I was always networking because I wanted to get out of there. You just wanted to make that next move. And I think I look back at that, like I worked so much harder than I actually do now. But it's important, I guess, to have that foundation. But again, I think it's all the internal motivation of like a combination of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember, Nabil, I remember you telling me to get the heck out of Prince Rupert, where I was working. When that job came open in Prince George, you knew the guy that was working there before me, and it's like, get your tape together, get it into the news director there, and figure out a way. Just figure out a way. And
yeah, no, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, and you really helped me like push myself to probably take a step ahead of where I probably was in my career, that I may have not been ready for at the beginning, and probably it took a while for me to kind of get my footing there. And you talk about mistakes. I literally made the maximum amount of mistakes that you're allowed to make in a job until I no longer had the job.
Right.
You've done a good job at maintaining those connections and maintaining like good rapport with the people that you have worked with in the past. And does that stuff come to you later on in life, like now, all these many years later, or are those relationships or things that you put behind you?
I think it's important to never, burn a bridge. Or times I could have said some things, but I don't think it's worth it. And so it's important. Like I look at CBC, I look at TSN. Those are important contacts to have. And you make this push to ESPN. When I did that, I had no idea how it's going to turn out. This was like a leap of faith that I would be ready. We talk about being ready. Like imagine making that jump, right? And so you want to stay in contact with these people that make decisions. Leave on the right note. And I think I did that, which was good. But as far as going back to Prince George, and I think Winnipeg, not as much, but they're people that, meant a lot to me or really went out of their way to help me out. I still, I definitely connect with for sure. And by the way, the one thing that really gets me too is when people say I'm not ready, because I'll just look at my own experience. Like I was never ready for any of the jobs I got. You're just never going to be ready. And we have a common friend who also works in the industry, now works in Toronto. And he would always tell me the same thing. And I remember that. And I'm always like, dude, you got to put yourself in that position to succeed, right? So you get there. Most likely, if you're moving up, you got better resources around you. You'll have better people working around you, most likely. And then it's up to you too, right? You have to step up. But when you have that, it's just like in sports, right? You play on a higher level, you're playing with better players around you, and then it's time for you to step up. So I think it's important. I mean, you don't want to shoot your shot too high and put yourself in a really bad spot. But I think, when people say they're not ready and I just got to get comfortable. No, don't ever get comfortable. Be comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think that's kind of the progress that you need to make in kind of the mentality you need to have sometimes in this industry.
Okay, so let's talk about then that leap of faith that you're referring to. You made that leap of faith from TSN to ESPN, the mothership of all sports broadcasting networks, obviously crossing the border like you talked about. Why did you make that leap of faith? What kind of led you to doing that? And then the sort of second part of that question is like, sort of what did you leave behind? What do you miss about the Canadian network? TSN being for a long time the mothership of Canadian sports networks. So that leap of faith was a big one that you made. Why did you make it? And then what do you miss about the Canadian jobs?
I'll be 100% honest. The reason I left was because I wanted to do more. And I just didn't see those opportunities, and I was just getting frustrated. And listen, like the Canadian industry, broadcasting industry is shrinking. There's no doubt about it. Just like the American industry is shrinking a little bit too, but there's just way more possibilities. And, ESPN was never on my radar, not till 2 years ago. Like I never even thought about it. And like when we talk about, your 5-year plan and so I just wanted to get to like a Toronto or Vancouver. Like that was a big market for me. And to be on a national stage, since CBC and then to TSN, like that was a dream. That was it, right? And I thought, okay, let me just work my way up on TSN. And it was great. Like I had a great run there of like, I think it was 8 years, 8.5 years, but I could see myself, I knew I could do more. I honestly knew I could do more. And at one point it was just getting really frustrating, not being able to have those opportunities and a whole host of reasons. And then for me personally, I was just, like I said, being frustrated. I was like, I gotta clear my mind. And what I did was, no joke, like how we started out, right from day one, I redid my demo and I sent it to a network executive, not ESPN, it was a different network, in the States. Just sent it to them cold and just introduced myself. And I said, hey, listen, I just kind of want some feedback. Like if you have some time to give me some feedback, I would love it. That's it. And this network executive was a VP of talent, said, hey, your stuff's great. Stuff's great. Like we're not hiring. And again, I wasn't asking to be hired. It was just to get some feedback, and she gave me some feedback. And I was like, man, if this person thinks, I got talent, like she didn't even have to email me back. She could just, because usually in the States, you got to go through an agent. I was like, okay. And that just restarted everything. And that was about 2 years ago, roughly. And
well, it's interesting. It sounds like you got that same advice from someone you didn't know, that you were giving that common friend that we were talking about like, don't get comfortable, believe in yourself, kind of just put yourself out there, right? You maybe lost that part of your journey until you kind of got restarted again.
I 100% agree. I 100% agree. And it's funny because I would still get a lot of people, just constant people just messaging me, and I would give them all this advice, and I'm not taking my own advice, And so, and I came to that realization. I was like, listen, I'm telling people to go take chances and to, continue to kind of pursue and not get comfortable, like you mentioned, and I'm getting comfortable. And I think that kind of led to some frustration. And when I got that feedback, I'm telling you, man, it was instant. I was like, okay, let's go. And so then that's when I started thinking, okay, what can I do? What are the other opportunities? And that's when I had to talk with my wife, and I'm like, hey, what if this was a possibility? And she's like, hey, we'll do it. And so once she said we'd do it, again, just redid my demo again. I had to do it very quietly. There's a video guy at TSN that I bought a couple nice bottles of whiskey for. And he hooked me up because it's hard to find all this, inventory of tape.
Yeah.
And then I went home, and that's, I think, do you remember I had actually asked you how to work, what's it on Mac? Not Final Cut, but iMovie.
Yeah.
I was like, Shai, you came to my house in Vancouver. I don't know if you remember that. You came to my house in Vancouver and you gave me a refresher on how to work iMovie.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. And I honestly, I would sit for it took me a week, and I'd be there 9 hours just sitting and cutting. I was so bad at it. My computer's slow and going through so much footage. And then I finally cut something that I liked. And then I go to work at night too, by the way. So it was kind of like all over again. My second job was to find a job kind of thing, which was kind of always my mentality at the beginning of my career. Long story short, I sent it to an agent who, really liked me, came back, I met him. They're a smaller agency, but it's kind of tricky too, because I had an agent in Canada, which was absolutely useless. And you don't need one. If anyone's ever watching it and wanting to know, you don't need one in Canada. In the States, you do. And then from there, that's kind of where it took off. And then, I had an audition at one network, came close to getting that job, and I'm glad I didn't get it. But that just doing that kind of showed me again and reinforced that, listen, I belong in this kind of playing field that I know. Because there's I don't know if you guys agree, but there's a thought that American broadcasters are just much better than Canadian broadcasters. I don't know. Would you guys agree? Or
maybe,
no,
but
look at some of the best,
exactly, Zam.
Some of the best broadcasters in the U.S. right now are Canadian.
Exactly.
You look at Ali Velshi at MSNBC. You look at Adnan Burke, who was at ESPN, who's now at DAZN and MLB Network.
Wasn't Peter Jennings Canadian, or is that
Peter Jennings is Canadian? Yeah, he was. There's lots. There's so many good ones.
So yeah,
that
to
have
your
gone
point,
down this
Nabil, that's a myth.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't think it's true. I guess at the highest level, again, there's just so much more exposure here in the States, right? And it's almost at the highest levels, almost celebrity-like, right? Here in the States, when you're at a certain level, and so it's just that was kind of the mentality. But when I went for that first audition, and I was a finalist, it was me or whoever else they hired. I knew, okay, this is amazing. And then I went for another audition, and actually, I went to ESPN about a year and a half ago, and sorry, a year before I got hired. And they told me, they were very clear with me. They're like, listen, we don't have a job for you. We just want to see what you look like on set, and we want to put you through an audition. So I was like, all right, great. Went down there, super nervous, knowing that, like, man, this is my one shot. This is my one shot. Like, I never in my life would have thought I'd be at ESPN. So the photo that I posted when I said I'm leaving TSN, that photo was from my audition, actually, because I wanted to take a photo and show Adam one day that I actually had an opportunity to go there for an audition, just in case it didn't work out. And honestly, I just kept in touch with the VP there over time, and he just sent me some more stuff. I want to see some more. I want to see more of this, and that. And I just kept doing that. And then, a few months later, it kind of started to roll, and you could tell that they needed somebody to come in, and kind of went from there.
I mean, the fact that you took that photo the first time you were over there speaks to the fact that passion was still there for you, and following that path and trying to go to ESPN was the right decision for you, right?
Yeah, and I just go back to like the little thing, like cutting that demo. Like that was a lot of work, especially for somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. And it was frustrating, and the tracks, and I don't know what I'm doing. And so spending that week of just, I'm telling you, mind-numbing time, because I'm slow. But it was okay. Like, I wasn't frustrated. I was happy to do it. I was excited to do it. Then I go to work, stay up late, come back and work. And that's when I was like, what are you doing? Like, go to sleep, kind of thing, right? But I would keep on working on it, because I wanted it to be really, really good, so I could show this agent and kind of, get the best possible review. But yeah, again, hearing from that one VP 2 some odd years ago was the best thing that happened, and it just really got me going again and reignited that passion again, because I knew I could do more. And then again, it's taking a leap of faith, right? Because I felt like I was doing pretty well at TSN, but ESPN's a whole different ball game, and it is. And coming here the first 3 weeks, I just shadowed, because they're like, listen, we have so many more resources that you might not know of, that you probably didn't have at your disposal here, and they do things differently. Their systems are different, and I think for me, it was just like, okay, let's go, and let's just try to adapt right away. But the best advice I got from my guy from Scott Van Pelt, and I got similar advice from other people. Scott sat me down. He's like, listen, be yourself. He goes, you're on the roster, you're on this team, so just be yourself. They hired you for a reason. And that's pretty cool advice coming from Scott. So,
well, you know what?
I did that.
That's great advice. I've noticed that. And sorry to interrupt you, but early when we were talking about those Whitecaps demos, when you came back from Prince George, and I might have got my timing wrong, but I think that's when it was. You were trying to show your personality in a lot of that stuff, and I've noticed more than ever that some of the stuff you're sharing on Instagram that you're doing at ESPN has a lot more of your personality in it, and it's been a while since you've been able to do that, because outside of Jay and Dan at TSN, it's just not the place to do that, right?
It was a situation where, man, I just felt like we should be able to show more personality. That's on me too, right? And finding and picking my spots. And I just felt like American TV, especially when they do like panels and stuff, which is what I really want to do, is work with analysts and doing all that kind of stuff. And when I was doing March Madness with like Sam Mitchell and Jack Armstrong, they understand it, and they really like having fun. And
yeah, you're a host by nature, right? That's what you are. You're a host.
Here, the big thing was, especially when I got to ESPN, was like, show your personality. And even for our demos, it's funny, I would do a lot of stuff with Craig Button. And Craig's amazing. He understands it. He wants to have fun and have personality. And it's hard to do that sometimes on sports, and it's hard to do with hockey, by the way. Canadians take hockey very seriously.
You went from covering hockey in the States and now doing a lot of hockey, or in Canada, now doing a lot of hockey in the States. Well, when there was hockey, with Barry Melrose, like that's got to be a completely different ballgame, and a show that probably has completely different resources than what you would have had at TSN as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like the way hockey is covered in Canada is what we do, like still tenfold here in the States for football, for basketball, for college sports. The NHL is, I mean, it's underneath those sports, that's for sure. But I think with the resources we have for the show we do in the crease, you're going to get every highlight every night. So it's for the hardcore hockey fan. It's on ESPN Plus. And when we have Barry in there, it's awesome because Barry, again, he's so much fun.
You've been super gracious with your time, and I want to shift gears here a little bit before we end up. You've talked about it a couple times throughout this conversation. You've referenced being an Ismaili Muslim, and you've always been open and proud about that. At least in the last 10, 15 years that we've known each other. Is that something that you've chosen to do, or does that come naturally to you? And I ask specifically because you emceed this event, a little while ago. I think it was the opening of the Ismaili Center Toronto or the Aga Khan Museum, something like that.
Aga Khan Park.
Aga Khan Park, right. And after that, His Highness the Aga Khan was in the building there. You're the MC with him in the room. That's a big moment for people of our faith. You said it was one of your proudest moments, but you've also spoken out about being a Muslim on social media and elsewhere. And I just wonder, like I said, if that's something that's hard for you to do, knowing what potential fallout there may be, or if you're proud to do that.
I think for me, like when I speak about it, it's usually when it's regarding like a celebration or a big moment in our community. And I'm proud about it. Navroz, Kushali, all these sorts of things. The park opening, anytime we have something in our community that's helping the larger community, I'm always going to be happy to talk about it. And again, I guess it's just for me being proud. As far as like religion and politics and getting deep into that, I've never really done that. It's not really my thing. But I think for me, sending a Shali Mubarak message, I think it's important, and it's not something I have to do so I can get likes or retweet. No, it's none of that. It's just because I know I have a lot of Ismaili followers, right? And I just want to get the message out because I think it's important, and it's important to be out there in the public that this is the day we're celebrating. Funny thing about the park, I was thinking back on this quite a bit recently because I had to do this session in Atlanta, and we were talking about my story or whatever. And the park was one of the proudest moments, maybe the most proudest moment for me. But it was also like the scariest and hardest thing I've ever had to do. The pressure I felt going into that was incredible. And believe it or not, Jeff O'Neill, former hockey player at TSN, me and him were really close. And, I was talking to him about it, and he's not a religious guy. He doesn't know much about our community. But he was like walking. I was mentally fried because I was really, really nervous. I didn't know how I was going to react when you're, 10 feet from the Imam, from the Aga Khan. And B, this is being live streamed across the world. And the content that's there, I'm not reading highlights. I'm not joking around. There's no personality base. You're reading, stuff that's very serious, stuff that's written. I have a hard time reading. I'm not gonna lie to you. Sometimes I have a hard time reading. So it was stuff that at first I had to audition for it. I almost didn't do it. I ended up doing it, said yes. And it was about a week of just complete stress. I didn't tell anybody besides my parents and Nasreen's parents and that kind of thing, and my sister. But Jeff was the guy who actually helped me out a lot. And he actually had me talk to one of his friends that he used to talk to when he was playing, just to get in the right mindset. And that's no joke. And that's how like fried I was and nervous. And it was when I was able to do that and it went well. I think things changed for me mentally too, even for work, because I was like, if I can do this, and I think, again, it was the most pressure I've ever put on myself for an event. then I can do a lot more things. And I think that's kind of what kind of triggered some of the feelings of like wanting to do more again. But I think it's also something I refer back to when I came to ESPN, because I thought about that too. That's probably the toughest thing I've ever had to do, even though I've done broadcasts in front of, hundreds of thousands of people or even a million or whatever it is. So just our community and being lucky enough to do that is one thing. And then I think it's been beneficial in my career too, as a side note, only kind of realizing that recently. But yeah, I almost took that as a job, which sounds weird, right? But I wasn't in there for like a religious experience. I was there to MC for this park opening. And I think that's the way I was able to separate my feelings and knowing, okay, this is why I'm here. So that's kind of the way I took it, so I could get my head straight anyways.
And speaking of tough situations and also religion and politics, as much as you don't necessarily want to dip your toe in that realm, sometimes that kind of stuff follows you around. And I guess I'm speaking specifically about one of your experiences when you were at TSN, when you and Gurdeep Aluwalia, also a brown dude, were anchoring SportsCenter together, and then faced some pretty terrible comments online, maybe not directly, but certainly directly, but not only directly. And some of the comments were, directed to the network for putting two brown guys together. And, maybe take us through what happened there and how that affected you and how you moved forward after that in either dealing with stress and feedback and criticism.
Yeah. And I think the thing we got to remember about that time is, like, I think we have now, the online mentality and how to take things online has changed. That was back, I think, 2013. And the way we read Twitter, the way we were affected by Twitter and social media back then is kind of different than now. Like, I think now when people are getting ripped up, it's a little, I don't want to say easier, but I think we understand it a little bit better. This is what Twitter is. This is kind of the negative space it can be. But back then, I think it was still on the rise. I don't know if there was Instagram back then. I can't remember, but it was tough, man. Like, again, like I told you, I was really hard on myself already. And when I got to TSN, I just wanted to fit in, which I think was the wrong mentality to have. I should have just tried to be myself, but I was just trying to fit in. I told Gurdeep this was going to happen. It's funny, I predicted it before the show because I was already getting it all the time. And then when me and Gurdeep went on the next morning, it's, trending on SportsCenter's trending on in Canada. At the end of the day, like, it was frustrating. It was disheartening. And I always, was thinking to myself, is this how it's always going to be? Like, I'm always going to be the brown guy at SportsCenter. Gurdeep at the time was at CP24, so just filling in once in a while. He joined us a little later on, but it was one of those moments where I was like, oh my God, like, I've worked so hard. I finally got to this dream job. And now I can't read a hockey highlight, or I can't read a certain highlight, or whatever it is, because of the color of my skin, which is ridiculous. So, I would say in the last 3-4 years, completely died out. I get the rare ones here and there. I haven't got anything in the States, which is like nothing. That I never Google myself, never like look up my name, but like people have like actually directed it at me, nothing. So that's been great. But I think, now the understanding is different. Like, I was kind of ready for it in the last few years. If it came to me, the understanding is a little different, that don't take it so personally. It's Twitter. And we talked about this. Remember back in the day, like, for every person that loves you, two people are going to kind of hate you. It's just that when people do hate you, it kind of hurts. Right. But
yeah, silent honestly, majority, loud minority, right?
Totally, man. And so now it's like, when people hate me, I'm just like, whatever, man. Like, it doesn't really matter to me. I don't check my Twitter mentions that much, as much, I should say, as I used to. And I'm more comfortable with myself. I'm more comfortable, I'd say, in the last 3-4 years kind of thing. Like, I'm just way more comfortable with who I am when I am on air. And so, I don't care as much. And sometimes when people come at you and they don't like you, or they found a mistake or whatever it is, Twitter police, I'll acknowledge it. I like even acknowledge, hey, you were right. Like, I made a mistake on this fact, or whatever it is, right? But I think it's just the racial profiling, that sort of stuff. I don't think it's ever going to end. And
no one can really be ready for that, right?
Yeah, it was such a weird spot. And like, TSN had to put out like this PR release, and we had to go on radio. And again, like, I didn't want to be like a victim or anything like that. I just wanted to do my job at the time and just fit in. And, luckily it kind of went away. And part of that, again, too, and this is not to make an excuse for the people who are the trolls, is that I've noticed that when there is change, people have a hard time with change, especially on TV. Like, we all have people we love watching on TV, people we probably don't like watching on TV. And at that time, for so long, SportsCenter had been like the same set of anchors. Remember, at that time, it was just TSN 1 and 2, I think, or TSN 2. And so then I was just the new guy. And that didn't really sit well with too many people. And when I filled in with Jay and Dan, that was the worst, because people wanted Jay and they wanted Dan, and I was not either of them. And so I would usually get killed on that night too. But
filling in for Jay and Dan is worse than racism.
Dude, it's brutal. And it's like, I'm doing Dan a favor. He wanted the night off, and I'm doing him a favor, and then I just get absolutely destroyed. So, hey, it's part of the journey. But I'm glad I didn't quit, or I didn't let it get to me any further than it already did, because like I said, you work so hard to get where you get, and then all of a sudden you're letting people who I've never had anyone come up to me in person and be like, "Hey man, you're this, that, and that, you're Osama, whatever, all that kind of stuff." And it's usually always positive things. So whatever.
Yeah, the internet's a weird place. For sure. Yeah. Hey Zam, I'm gonna switch gears to talking about being a dad. So if you want to jump in with anything here, feel free. Otherwise, I'll keep going.
Carry it on. I don't know anything about being a parent or having a family, so
so we'll let this be a lesson.
About being a kid, that's for sure.
I am still a child, so I know how to do that.
I know that.
So me and Adam have a lot in common in that regard, as do Zane and Aiden.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about being a dad, and you've mentioned your kids, Adam and Hannah, and the most important thing I've noticed here is that your son is a Leafs fan, and being from Vancouver, is that something you've encouraged or you have to live with? How would you characterize that?
No, I mean, the thing is, listen, for me, when I started working at CBC, and you kind of working on a national network, like I said, people in Canada, it's crazy. People are insane. And I love it. The passion for hockey is unbelievable. And then you get to Toronto and everyone's like, oh, it's the Toronto Sports Network and all this sort of stuff. I didn't care as much anymore. And I kind of lost my Canuck fandom. I was a Canuck fan growing up, diehard Canuck fan growing up. But I lost my fandom for the industry because I didn't want to be known as a Canucks fan. I think when Adam was born, I was already far removed from it, that I was just like, he's born in Toronto. I don't know what. He's born in Toronto. Austin Matthews, by chance, came out and, drafted by the Leafs. And it was a great time to be a Leafs fan as far as, a player of his stature coming in. And that's his guy. He loves Austin Matthews. He wears that jersey. He's got 3 of them now.
And you know what? I can't blame him. I lived in Toronto or southwestern Ontario for a year, and maybe it wasn't even a great time to be a Leafs fan. They might have made the playoffs. I can't even remember. But even me living in Kitchener and having all the Leafs games on TV every day, like the Canucks games here, I just found myself gravitating towards them too, because it's just the center of the universe. It's true, man. There's a different feeling about Toronto, and there's so many people that are on the same bandwagon, and it was just, it was easy to get on that bandwagon. So I was watching every Leafs game as I was watching every Canucks game. So I don't blame Adam. I might blame you a little bit, but you'll have to deal with that. He doesn't have to deal with that.
But the funny thing is, listen, I want the Leafs to do well so Adam's happy. And you can talk to my wife. She's actually a Leafs fan now. That's a whole different story.
Yeah, okay.
That you can talk to her about. But I'm happy when the Leafs win, only for Adam's sake. And then I'm also happy when the Canucks are doing well this year. I know the situation is what it is right now in the world, but actually fighting for that spot, the wildcard spot, it's been amazing. I'm awesome. I hope they go deep in the playoffs and they do some things. I think it's what they've done this year. They've been one of the best stories in the NHL. So you can like both cities. I know people from Vancouver hate Toronto. Toronto doesn't care about Vancouver, and it's a whole thing. I had somebody the other day call me a traitor because
call me a traitor too, because I'm in that same camp. I love Vancouver, but when I lived in Toronto and visited Toronto when I was in Kitchener, I fell in love with Toronto, and I assume you probably have a fond spot in your heart for Toronto as well, and I know Zam probably does too.
I mean, I call Toronto home. Toronto's home for me. And it's just because my roots have been there the last 10 years, and that's, the last 10 years has been, big 10 years of my life. Right. Vancouver will always be special, and they're different. They're just different. Right. But it is funny, man. I'm telling you, it is funny. Some people just get so offended. And I'm like, I just don't understand the hate. They're two different places, two different types of characters, if you want to say, you know, the markets of people. I just think both places have a lot to offer, and they're two amazing cities. So why can't you like both? I don't know.
Yeah, why can't we all be friends? Okay, let's before we let you go, let's talk about sports. First of all, what do you think of what's going on right now in the sports world? It's so unprecedented, and obviously it takes a back seat to what's going on in the world right now with this coronavirus. But how have you experienced the sports world shutting down?
It's crazy, man. I mean, my industry is based on those sports leagues functioning, right? So it has been a weird situation. I think it's surreal what's going around the world right now. I was working the night the NBA shut down, so SBP was on air. He broke the news, and then the show right after. And I mean, just going through it, we did 2 hours just on the fly of just talking about the NBA shutting down and talking to different people, Woj and Rachel Nichols and all these other, you know, Tim Legler. It just didn't feel real. And then the next day when everything went down, you're like, wow, this is going to be a time where like our kids, our grandkids, I should say, are going to be studying this. You know what I mean? Like this is going down at a time where this is going to be part of history now. And so I hope things come back. Sports is secondary. I hope things in the world get better first, obviously, and we can trigger and kill this thing and get back to normal to some degree.
Whatever normal looks like, yeah.
Yeah, who knows? It's a different world now, right? But like, I think sports is secondary in that sense. I think when sports comes back, to whatever degree it comes back, I think hopefully it brings some joy in people's lives. That's kind of all I would say at this point, right? Because I think we need an outlet, right? And sports usually kind of brings communities together.
From not only from this being your livelihood being sports, but how do you occupy your time? Like
kids, Zam.
There's that disconnect. Yeah,
I got no problem with that. I got no problem. I got kids. My son's turning 5 in 2 months, and my daughter's turning 1 in 2 months. So it's actually nice for my wife because we're home a lot together. So I can help her, you know, tag team because we don't have any help here. But it's been nice in a sense. If you're going to take anything from this, you get to spend some time with your family, right? And I've always been lucky because I work usually at nights. I'm spending time during the day, but Adam now goes to pre-K during the day, so I don't see him. And so this has been great. We spent a lot of time together, and great's not the right word, but you know, again, like if you're taking something from it, you get to spend that time. So I think you cherish that time you have and make the most of it. But again, like as far as like not having having too much time, probably not. I mean, I'm watching a couple more movies here or there that I probably would, but
and doing more podcasts too. As far as being a sports broadcaster and a sports fan, I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, that being a sports fan doesn't go away. You still perk up when, these, historic things happen, whether it's in hockey or other sports. What catches your eye? What gets you going as a sports fan these days? You talked about, maybe not being a Canucks fan anymore, but I'm sure there are things that you still react to as a sports fan. Like what are you looking forward to usually in the sporting world?
Basketball is my favorite sport. I love hockey, but basketball is my favorite sport. And the coolest thing was, it kind of sucked, but it was also really cool in a way. Like when I came to ESPN, that's when the Raptors were making their run. And I did so many Raptors broadcasts over the years. And then finally this past year, I didn't really do any. And this was the year they had Kawhi. This was the year they made the run. And to be able to be here at ESPN and see the way they covered it here, the way they covered basketball here, was amazing. And the cool thing here, and it's a different mentality because again, at TSN, it was more like, not just TSN, I think in Canada generally, you don't really show your fandom for hockey. Most of our hockey broadcasters do not tell you who their teams are, or if they have a team anymore, right? They just want a good score, a good game, which is fine. Here, they're like, be a fan, man. If you're a fan of the Raptors, tell the people, right? Like within reason, obviously, but like you can be a fan. Like, that's the reason you're here, is because you're a fan of sports. So I got to see it through that lens. And, you know, my on cams were all kind of about being a fan, to be honest, and kind of Toronto inside, you know, scoops and stuff like that. And so it was neat to see it in that sense. And then I did get a chance to go to game 5 of the NBA finals. Spent more on the ticket that I've ever spent in my life. But I did buy it.
No hookups though, hey?
No hookups at that time. I'm not big time, so I didn't get a hookup, but I did get a hookup in that I got at face value. It was a life. I took it as a life experience that who knows if this will ever happen again. And that's the coolest thing I've ever been to in my life. Like with 3 minutes when Kawhi hit those back-to-back threes and we thought we were now going to win the game. I had never been in anything like that. Like the emotion in the build, people almost crying. And then for them to lose on that last play, which was ridiculous. And it was pretty surreal, but I look back on it and just, so the Raptors for me, that championship run was something really special.
Greatest moment during that run. What was the greatest moment for you? That there or something else during that whole
shot
run?
Yeah, the shot. It's got to be the Kawhi shot, right?
Yeah, I was in my hotel. I lived in a hotel for almost May, June, July, almost 3.5 months. And I was in my hotel watching that game, and I'm not gonna lie, I got pretty emotional when Kawhi hit that shot. No one to high five, nothing. It was just like literally in my room. And when he hit that shot, I was like, oh my God, these guys might have a chance. Like, that's one of those moments like, this doesn't happen just for anybody, right? Like, it could be some fate here involved. And I'm not saying that I thought they were going to win the championship, but that was just incredible. Like, to see that happen. And then for me, again, I think when they won, it was just so like zoned in and it's just amazing. But I think for me, again, going back to game 5, 3 minutes ago, that was, again, another moment for me when Kawhi hit that second of the back-to-back. I was like, they're going to win the championship tonight. I already told my wife I'm sleeping downtown. I went with our friends, Sammy Barwell, and he was in town. And I'm staying at his place in downtown. I had the free pass. You know, everything was great. All set up to happen. And, well, it didn't. So.
Yeah, it didn't happen. That kind of reminds me of the 2011 Stanley Cup final and me watching in my basement alone in Kitchener and just going crazy, only for them to actually, you know, lose in the end. But those are crazy experiences.
I was at the 2011 Stanley Cup final. I was in there for the 4 Canucks games. Guys came down for CBC, right?
Right.
And that's kind of when I knew I lost my fandom, was when they lost in game 7. I kind of was like, it hurt, but I was like, not like how I would have reacted maybe a year before, maybe 2 years before.
Yeah. That's the silver lining of my failed sports broadcasting career, is that I'm still fully in it as a Canucks fan, and it hurts.
Good for you. No, good for you though, man. That's the way, I mean, that's one thing I wish I kind of had kept.
It's tough.
You know, I made that choice.
So best moment so far during your career as a sports broadcaster, is it what you just outlined, or is there something else that stands out as well?
I go back to like the 2010 FIFA World Cup, where I was thrown in this position where I was way underqualified to be doing this thing.
That was in Brazil, right?
No, that was in South Africa.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was doing the post game show, and I was supposed to be on an internet show. That's what they had signed me up for, like some internet show. No problem. Who's watching? Whatever. Then it was like some show they were going to put on Bold. I don't know if you remember that channel, Bold.
Yeah.
Specialty channel. I'm like, nobody has this thing, not a problem. And then it was like literally 3 days before, I'm not even kidding you, they're like, hey, we're going to put you on the main network. Dude, I'd never done a panel like that in my life. I never hosted anything in my life. And so besides like Hockey Night Online, which I had done for, you know, a month and a half, 2 months at that point. So it was a sink or swim kind of moment. There were some tough ones, there were some good ones, but that was when I kind of learned, hey, I kind of like doing this panel thing. And also being able to know that I could survive that moment was a big one for me. What else? I guess broadcasting wise, there's some cool ones at TSN. I went to Brazil for the 2014 World Cup, which was cool. Did the 2012 Euros. I spent the full 31 days traveling back and forth.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
But I'd probably go back to just now, like recency bias, like ESPN. Just, you know, my first broadcast at ESPN now, just getting it done, man. It was a morning show, and you know, you're in at like I think 4 in the morning or something, 4 I think it was. I got in 4 for a 7 o'clock show, and 3-hour show, and you just, again, your just emotions are like, get nervous and you want to get it right, and it's a big deal, right?
Yeah, I can't blame you. I mean, like we said, it's the pinnacle. It's the mothership of sports broadcasting. A lot of history, like you were talking about, a lot of history in that building, and it built certainly the sports landscape in North America and potentially around the world.
Yeah, and so again, put tons of pressure on myself. There for a reason, and then it's also morning. I'm not a morning guy. I've never done morning shows. Like, I haven't done it for years, and it went well. For what it was, it went well, and that was kind of the start of. I would leave the building feeling good about myself, and I think those are positive. That's a positive reinforcement you kind of need once in a while, right? To know, okay, I could have done better here, but overall, I felt really good, and so I think being able to conquer some of those shows early on was got to be the pinnacle, I guess, of my career.
Well, we've kept you for more than an hour and 15 minutes here. I'm gonna let you go here, and you haven't even had a sip. Haven't even had a sip of water, so I don't know how you're surviving here. But anyways, what you talked about continuing on, moving forward, continuing to go up. What do you have as a goal now? I mean, I don't know if that's something you can publicize, knowing that you just got to where you are, but generally, like we said, you're at the top of your game. Where can you go next? Where do you want to go next?
A lot on the go right now, which is great. Like, again, I look back and I haven't been there a year yet, and we still got Sports Center, which is my main gig. Right now, not so much because there's not many sports going on. But the new and exciting thing I got going on right now is there's a new app called Quibi. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it or not, but it's a new streaming service. The idea behind it's quick bites. So they got a whole bunch of Hollywood content that is 10 minutes or less. Each episode, 10 minutes or less. So, you could do a season, say a season's 10 episodes, like 100 minutes, right? So it's exciting. And at a time where people need content. And so part of that website, not the website, part of the app is a site called Daily Essentials. And we have a show called Replay on there. And so we'll be giving you 5 to 7 minutes, your top stories of the day, some fun stuff, a little entertainment. So it's a different look at sports. You're still going to get the things you need to know, the next day when you want to have those conversations with people at work and with your friends, and you kind of will be up to date on sports, but we're also going to have a bit of a different look at it because, the time restraints we have and our audience. So I'm excited about that. That's a full go. That's the next thing for me right now. And then we'll see what happens, right? Like I said, it's been a great year so far. It's gone by so fast. But who knows? Like we talked about, right? You never know what the opportunities that come up. But right now it's just try to do as much as I can at ESPN. And right now, again, with this Quibi project, I'm really excited about it. So we'll see what happens there.
Well, I have to say, like you said, there weren't a lot of brown dudes and ladies or smileys specifically on TV when we first started pursuing this, and there are a lot more now, and we know a lot of them, right? The circles are tight here in our community, but I do have to say that every time I see you on TV or on Instagram, proud of what you're doing. I'm proud of you, and it's really awesome to see that you've really been able to make your dreams come true, and certainly an inspiration to myself and others. So congrats on everything, and it was really nice to catch up here more than anything.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah, exactly. And then we got a podcast out of it, so that's good too. But I appreciate you spending some time with us.
Yeah, no worries. The next time I come to Vancouver, let's do another podcast together and sit down together, which would be a lot nicer, right? We can kind of shoot the breeze that way.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks.
See ya.
Thank you.
All right, another big thank you to Nabil Karim for joining us on our first episode as our first guest of Unanchored. Zam, a fitting way to kick this podcast off, I think.
Oh, it was a conversation that was a long time coming and overdue for the three of us to reconnect. It's been a long time.
Yeah, and I hope everyone listening got a sense of how great of a guy Nabil is. He's been a good friend to the both of us and many others for a long time, and but also what he's gone through and how he made his decisions to get where he is, and the sky's the limit for him. He's reached the pinnacle of the sporting world, quote unquote, at ESPN, but certainly still a long way to go, and I'm sure we're going to see even greater things from Nabil. So I can't wait to keep an eye on him and see what's in store for him.
we'll be watching, and hopefully we'll be getting a chance to see him on hopefully NBA broadcasts or
Whenever sports get back on, right?
exactly once this whole COVID-19 thing blows over, which could be a while from now, but hopefully sooner rather than later.
All right. Well, we wanted to thank you, the listener, who are probably on episode 1, mostly our family and friends, for listening, and hopefully you got through the hour plus of Nabil Karim. We're anticipating our episodes will be about an hour in length moving forward, but appreciate you listening. And if you haven't followed us already, go to Instagram and follow Unanchored Podcast, and go to Twitter, follow Unanchored Pod, wherever you prefer. And you can always catch all episodes on unanchoredpodcast.ca and wherever you listen to podcasts, wherever you're listening right now. But please share with family and friends if you enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you next time.